Joe here at ECRM's Pet Session in Chicago, and I'm with Antoine Seailles from Pet Food Experts. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Antoine was one of the panelists on our retail panel discussion, and one of the key topics that we talked about was CBD. So now we've been doing a lot with CBD and ECRM's other categories, and it's starting to grow a lot in pet. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Pet Food Experts.
Sure.
And the retailers that you service.
Sure. So we've been around for about 30 years distributing to independent pet retailers across the country, mostly around the northern half of the country, 4,000 stores in total. And we service from independent single store operations to the indie chains, from the Chrysers and Chuck and Don's and Bentleys to Pet Supplies Plus, and everything in between.
Great, and you guys have been in the CBD game for a little while, right?
Yeah, a few years now. We started searching and researching probably about 3.5 years ago, and we spent a good year and a half before we actually brought anything on in the space. Really try to understand what the space was, what was involved, and really do our vetting out process to make sure we were comfortable with what brands we brought on.
So a year and a half just on the vetting and prepping. So keep that in mind, guys. You want to get your ducks in a row. So what kind of things did you look into during that time?
So we really looked at sourcing, we looked at process, extraction process, we looked at people, companies, and really who's doing their research themselves. Technology and regulation continues to change, so you've got to stay up on that.
Yes.
You have to constantly be looking at what government's looking at, what government's doing. Extraction process continues to change. So what was the standard a year ago is not what it is today. So you've got to constantly be looking at what are companies doing? Are they staying ahead of it? Are they going with the technology, or are they still using what was the way to do it 2-3 years ago?
Gotcha. How do you keep up with what's going on?
So it's looking at who we're doing business with and looking at what they're doing, and then also doing research on your own. If you only listen to vendors, you're only going to get that perspective.
Gotcha.
So you've got to look at truly the industry, and then honestly do research, whether it's online, whether it's through articles, and asking and actually looking at facilities. So we actually go, I go to visit different facilities to see what they're doing, to understand kind of their process. It's one thing to have somebody in front of you sitting and explaining what they do. It's another to actually see it.
What kind of expertise do you have on staff, or do you work with it as far as legal?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got obviously our own legal department, but it's really on us to look at beyond just the legal aspect. It's really a regulatory piece. It's again, quality aspect. It's not just one thing. There's so many moving pieces. You have the 2014 Farm Bill that kind of set the standard up until last December, when the 2018 Farm Bill came out, which really changed a lot. And that's why you're seeing everybody get into this space now, because it's so demanding right now that anybody that has any inkling to get into it, they're getting into it now, which is why you're seeing so many more vendors today than just 6 months ago or 2 years ago. It's blown up. I mean, everybody's getting into it.
So now is the time for retailers to get involved if they haven't yet, because
100%, but you've got to do your research. You absolutely have to do your research. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the wrong product.
Gotcha. And so what kind of products do you have, or do the stores that you service, what types of products are they using?
Yeah, so the core product in the space of CBD or hemp is tinctures, the oil. So that is kind of the hardcore, original, best product there is. And from that, there's different soft chews, there's topicals, and on and on and on. So oils are really kind of the go-to, but it's also what the original item was. So technology has added so many diverse pieces to that space now.
Yeah.
But again, it's what kind of CBD are you using? How are you extracting it? Is it water soluble? Is it oil soluble? It all plays into efficacy. So if you're putting oil soluble CBD on a treat, it's going to be less effective than if you take water soluble, because it hits the gut and it loses efficacy with an oil versus a water soluble.
So, what are some of the challenges in getting involved with CBD?
So the biggest is there's so many unknowns. Everybody's getting into it, and not everybody knows what they're doing. So that's why you've got to do your research, and you've got to do it beyond just talking to vendors. You've got to do it just beyond talking to other people. You've got to do independent research. You've got to look at things. You've got to have a real understanding. So you've got to really read up on it.
So you can't really take their word for it, even though they may be legit, you know.
It's part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of the process. You can't depend on any one thing by itself.
Yeah.
You've got to look at all channels. You've got to look at every aspect of it and really do your homework.
Okay, so what would your recommendations? I guess those are your recommendations. Do your homework.
Yep.
Right. So make sure you do your research on where the products are being sourced.
Yep.
Make sure that they're in appropriate testing.
Yep.
Do your own testing.
Absolutely.
And what am I missing?
That's really the keys. It's understand sourcing, testing. Testing is vital. It is.
Gotcha.
It is absolutely. You should be getting raw material testing. You should get finished material testing, and the vendor should provide that. They should absolutely be testing that.
Okay.
And then on top of that, you should also do finished good testing. So it's third party verification, independent to what the vendor provides.
Gotcha. What about merchandising? How are the stores that you work with merchandising CBD products?
Most of them are getting into cases of some sort, display cases, whether they're locking cases or stand cases that kind of set the space apart. Listen, we're talking about a high dollar space. You've got to differentiate it, right?
Yeah.
You're not just gonna put it in supplemental. You've got to be concerned, obviously, shrinkage. So you've got to look at different ways to merchandise that's gonna stand out. It's a premium product, right?
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
a premium
no
space,
doubt.
premium dollars. You've got to make sure that you're differentiating this product for what it is, for the value. And so typically some type of display, whether it's a branded display for one vendor or it's a mixed display, it's typically some kind of merchandising display of some sort to really set it apart.
Now, talk about your ECRM experience. You've been coming for how long?
This is my first time.
This is your first time?
This
Really?
is my first time.
How have your meetings been going so far?
Great.
Is this a good setting for you to kind of get exposure to a lot of companies?
It's a wonderful setting. It's you get in front of somebody, you get down and dirty. You can actually talk about kind of where everybody stands and get a better understanding versus trade shows where you're standing in line or trying to get to the right person.
Yeah.
It's nice to sit down, whether it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever the setting is, to actually talk to the decision maker on both sides, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always a negotiation, right?
Yep.
And so to be able to get in front of somebody, sit down, have a review, talk about product mix, channel strategy, margins, all those pieces, and really have an understanding of, from a buyer's perspective, what the vendor's looking for, because sometimes it's a fit and sometimes it's not.
Yeah. So it's funny because I didn't realize. I thought you were coming before. So have you met with any CBD vendors yet?
Several.
Okay. Is this a good format for a retailer to get a lot of exposure to those companies?
I think it is. I think it is. There's so many different options out there, and to kind of get a read, you can sit through in one of these meetings or one of these conferences where you've got multiple vendors in that space. You get a real variety. Some are definitely have been doing this a lot longer.
Yep.
Some are newer to it, so you get a real mix of kind of where things are at. Some are more technology driven, and some are more space driven. So they've been in the space for a while. They know their core base items, whether it's oils or whatever it is. And that's what they do, and that's what they're good at, which is great. Some are more cutting edge and trying to move the space forward.
Great. So then it was a good idea for us to launch a CBD specific session.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, November 3 to 5th in Fort Lauderdale, that's when it's going to be. So, well, thank you again for the video. Thank you for joining us on the panel, and you added a lot to the discussion, and we've already gotten some great feedback on it. So,
excellent.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.